when the tea goes cold. The tea room is quiet when you enter. The cup is where it was left. There is no steam. No one rushed to drink it. This is not a problem. Nothing has gone wrong. The tea has simply been waiting longer than expected. Warmth was always part of the appeal. Not just heat, but what heat implied. Care, presence, attention. A sense that something was being done for you. The tea itself has not changed. It is still recognizable, still the same color, still the same scent. What has changed is the temperature. Beliefs often work this way. What mattered was not the content. It was the feeling of being held by it, the reassurance, the sense that someone had thought this through already. Repetition begins innocently. The same cup, the same words, the same explanations. At first, this feels grounding, reliable. Then something subtle happens. Nothing new arrives. No discovery, no surprise, no friction. Just the same certainty restated. Certainty depends on novelty more than it admits. Without movement, it echoes. Familiar phrases begin to lose weight, not because they are disproven, because they are overused. Answers start to arrive before questions form. This once felt efficient. Now it feels tired. There is no argument, no confrontation, just a thinning of attention. The tea room notices how often belief systems expect passion forever. They do not plan for boredom. Boredom is quieter than doubt. It does not announce itself. It simply stops leaning forward. The tea cools. No one notices immediately. There is no sharp moment of disappointment, just a sip taken later than usual. The taste is flatter, not wrong, just less alive. At the center of the table, the monk pauses. He touches the cup. It is cool. He says that most things do not collapse. They fade when no one is holding them anymore. Then he steps back. There is relief in this. Collapse would require explanation. Fading does not. Certainty begins to repeat itself louder, as if volume could replace heat. Slogans sound thinner now. They still make sense. They just do not land. The tea room recognizes this moment. It is often mistaken for betrayal, or weakness, or ingratitude. It is none of these. It is attention moving elsewhere. The cup remains on the table. No one takes it away. No one refills it. This is how many things end. Not with rejection, with neglect. The tea is still drinkable, still familiar, just no longer satisfying. There is no urgency to decide what comes next. The tea room allows this. At the far end, the monk speaks again. He says that boredom is not failure. It is information arriving gently. Then he leaves the cup exactly where it is. The tea is cold now. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just unmistakably. Cold tea is not dangerous. It does not poison. It does not deceive. It simply reveals what warmth had been softening. The flavor is clearer, not sharper, clearer. What was hidden by heat is now exposed. Many people stay with cold tea longer than they expect, out of habit, out of loyalty, out of reluctance to admit that something has changed. Leaving would require a decision. Staying requires none. There is a quiet comfort in familiarity, even when it no longer satisfies. The cup fits the hand. The routine remains intact. Nothing demands effort. This is where many beliefs settle, not because they are convincing, because they are already there. The tea room notices how rarely people leave because something is false. They leave because it no longer gives them anything. Cold tea does not inspire defense, it inspires endurance. Some people convince themselves they prefer it this way, that warmth was indulgent, that comfort was childish. This rationalization is gentle. It allows dignity to remain intact. Others simply stop noticing the cup at all. It becomes part of the furniture, always present, rarely considered. At the center of the table, the monk sits again. He lifts the cup and takes a small sip. He does not grimace. He only says that staying is often mistaken for loyalty, when it is sometimes just inertia. Then he sets the cup down. There is a moment when the kettle is noticed. It has been there the whole time. No one hid it. No one removed it. Not reaching for the kettle is a decision, a quiet one. It requires no announcement. Leaving often begins this way, not with rebellion, with omission. No new belief rushes in to replace the old one. This is important. The space remains empty. Emptiness is uncomfortable. It asks nothing and offers nothing. Many people rush to fill it. The tea room does not. Cold tea teaches patience. It does not demand action. It only makes continuation visible. Eventually, the cup is set aside. Not angrily, not ceremonially, just moved. This is not a conclusion. It is a pause extended. Nothing has been resolved. Nothing has been replaced. The world outside continues as it did before. The tea room remains a place where nothing must be decided immediately. At the far end of the table, the monk speaks once more. He says that when warmth fades, what remains is not emptiness but honesty. Then he places the cup on the edge of the table, where it can be seen but not mistaken for something else. The tea is cold. It is exactly what it is. No more, no less. The tea room does not change when someone else arrives. Another chair is pulled out. They sit without comment. No one asks why they came. Their cup is different from yours. You notice immediately. Not because it is wrong, because it is not what you would have chosen. Their tea is still warm. They seem comfortable, untroubled. This matters more than it should. Discomfort is rarely shared evenly. One person may feel urgency, another feels none. The gap between these feelings is where tension begins. The instinct to correct arrives quickly. You notice the difference. You see the inconsistency. You feel the urge to point it out. Correction feels like care. Silence feels like neglect. It is difficult to sit beside someone who appears settled in something you have begun to leave. Their comfort can feel like provocation. Their certainty can feel personal. Argument presents itself as the obvious tool. If you explain clearly enough, if you phrase it carefully, if you show them what you now see, surely that will help. But help is not always received as help. Sometimes it arrives sounding like judgment. Sometimes it sounds like abandonment. Correction threatens more than ideas. It threatens belonging. To be wrong publicly is not just an intellectual loss. It is a social one. Debate assumes shared goals, truth, resolution, progress. Certainty systems do not share these goals. They prioritize stability. When belief is load-bearing, correction feels like sabotage. You are not offering information, you are shaking the floor. The tea room has seen this before. Arguments escalate not because facts are lacking, but because safety is. At the center of the table, the monk pauses. He watches the other person lift their cup and drink easily. He says that no one listens while bracing for impact. Then he folds his hands and says nothing else. Staying in the room without correcting feels unnatural at first. It feels passive. It feels complicit. It feels like letting something slide. But restraint is not surrender. It is choice. Presence changes the shape of the space. Not immediately, not dramatically. It simply lowers the temperature. When no argument arrives, defenses loosen slightly. Not enough to change, enough to breathe. The urge to rescue remains. It does not vanish. You notice it. You do not obey it. This is harder than confrontation. Confrontation offers release. Restraint requires endurance. The tea room does not reward persuasion. It rewards staying. Differences are allowed to exist without being resolved. This feels incomplete. It is. Not every moment is designed for movement. Some are designed for stability. At the end of the table, the monk speaks once more. He says that sometimes the kindest thing you can offer is a chair that remains empty of argument. Then he reaches for the kettle, not to pour, but to check that it is still warm. The other person stays. You stay. Nothing changes. That is not failure. The kettle is lifted, not automatically, not as an answer, as an offer. You ask how they take their tea. This matters. Not because the question is important, because it is unnecessary, and you ask it anyway. They answer easily, as if this has never been questioned before, as if preference is obvious. You make the tea the way they like it. You do not comment on the amount of sugar. You do not adjust the temperature. You do not explain your reasons. The ritual continues. Care does not require agreement. This is easy to say, harder to practice. Making tea this way does not validate the belief behind it. It validates the person holding the cup. These are not the same thing. Small moments of friction appear naturally. They mention something in passing, an assumption, a certainty. You notice it. You let it rest. Questions, when they come, are shaped carefully, not to corner, not to expose, to open a window briefly. How did that start for you? What happens when that stops working? Does that ever feel tiring? These questions do not demand answers. They create pause. Pause is the only space where reflection enters uninvited. At the center of the table, the monk stirs his tea slowly. He watches the surface settle. He says that certainty survives argument, but softens in the presence of safety. Then he places the spoon down. Nothing dramatic happens. This is the point. They do not leave. They do not change. They do not thank you. The tea room does not rush them. It does not keep score. Leaving must remain possible without being required. This is the condition. When no pressure is applied, small inconsistencies become tolerable. They do not need to be defended immediately. They can exist quietly. This is where rigidity begins to loosen. Not visibly, internally. You notice when they repeat themselves. Not to correct, to recognize fatigue. Certainty tires itself out when it is no longer performing. Staying does not mean agreeing. It means remaining available. Sometimes nothing changes for a long time. This is not wasted time. The tea room has seen people leave months after the last conversation. Not because of anything said, because someone stayed without demanding transformation. Caring without converting feels unsatisfying at first. There is no closure, no victory, no visible outcome. But something else is preserved. Relationship, dignity, the possibility of return. The cups are refilled. No announcement is made. The room remains open. At the end of the table, the monk speaks again. He says that no one leaves a room they feel trapped in. Then he places an extra cup on the table, empty, and leaves it there. The tea room remains. Tea is still served. No one is pushed toward the door. Leaving is not the goal. Safety is.